to serve you, the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Interactive, so that you can keep in close touch with us by giving us a call at any one moment.
Concerned about the needs and welfare of our people.
And enlightening in our attempt to bring information to you.
That's what nice is all about.
And you can't get nicer than nice.
90.3, 96.7, 101.3 FM.
Nice radio.
Nice radio. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines and across the rest of the Eastern Caribbean, the time is 8 o'clock. It's time for this week's edition of Business Advantage. I'm Jerry George. Great to have you in our audience this evening.
Business Advantage for news, views, and commentary from the Caribbean's best economists and analysts.
If you think you're there that you don't. If you like to win and you think you can't, it's almost certain you won't. Life's battle doesn't always go to the stronger or faster man. But sooner or late, the man who wins is the man who thinks he can. If you think you're beaten, you are. If you think you're there that you don't. If you like to win and you think you can't, it's almost certain you won't. Life's battle doesn't always go to the stronger or faster man. But sooner or late, the man who wins is the man who thinks he can.
In these hard economic times, the place to get bargain and the best value for money is Munzie's Fresh Look at Richland Park, next to the cemetery and under the blue tent outside the Central Market. Ladies and gents, brand name clothing, shorts, boxers, watches, bags, shoe and dress slippers for all occasions. Adidas, Nike, Luz, Cargo, Old Navy and many more. Ladies, get your weave, wigs, underwear, shorts and fashionable tops in all colors and style. Also available are iPads, cell phones, headsets, earphones, and pocket radios. Prices are unbelievable, and Munzie's also have layaway plans. So make your way to the ladies under the blue tent next to the Central Market and in Richland Park next to the cemetery to Munzie's Fresh Look. Telephone 526-8063, 451-3003, or 451-3004.
DeFreitas and Associates, Chartered Accountants and Management Consultants, an independent firm in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, is proud to be associated with the business news. DeFreitas and Associates are full-service professional firms providing assurance, accounting, and taxation services, as well as management, financial, and business advisory services, all geared to meet the needs of today's entrepreneurs, not-for-profit organizations, governmental agencies, including statutory boards and business enterprises in a changing environment. See the yellow pages for more information, and we encourage you to visit our website at www.defreitas-consulting.com.
Joachim and Associates, helping those who do a great job do it better. What problems do we solve? Joachim and Associates use assessment tools to reduce turnover and bad hiring decisions, thereby reducing your cost per hire. Joachim and Associates, we lessen the need to outfires through strategic planning. Joachim and Associates ensure legal compliance through HR audits. Joachim and Associates, helping those who do a great job do it better.
Now, here's your Business Advantage host, Jerry George.
Welcome back to this edition of Business Advantage. This evening we have a very special program. Well, all our programs are special, but the focus this evening is one that we trust will really certainly raise your interest. This evening we're going to deal with a potentially very emotional subject. It's the subject of pensions. For years, politicians and unions promised pensions. But today, what is the reality? We all have to consider how we will pay for the days of our lives after our working days are over. Actually, it's a very scary subject, if you think about it. The current political environment and the impact of unsustainable pensions are creating the perfect storm for fear and confusion. Learn how you can be impacted and how you may shelter yourselves. In fact, as we look around, major cities and states are going bankrupt. Basic services may be interrupted. Most of our OECS countries are facing deficit financing. And that is financing that is growing, a deficit that is growing too large for the sustainable development of our countries. So the question is, what if your pension cannot be paid? Do you have a plan? Tonight on Business Advantage, we're going to seek to clarify just what pensions are all about and what, if any, steps you can take to secure yourselves and your family. Here to help us dissect this troubling subject is the man I have dubbed on this program the Dean of the Business Advantage faculty. So we have him in house tonight, Mr. Stanley DeFreitas. Mr. Stanley DeFreitas, you are here with us this evening. It's absolutely my pleasure to have you with.
Good evening, Jerry. Always my pleasure as well.
I might have put on the wrong microphone, so go again.
I said good evening. It's my pleasure to be here as well.
Yes, and we, as I said, we are going to be discussing what is potentially a very emotional and can be a very troubling subject. In fact, we're not even doing this in the context of something that airy-fairy. There are some real issues at the moment.
Very true.
A couple of weeks ago, I put up the story that pensioners who had pensions with Clico Industry, Clico Insurance, received notice during the last month that they had received their last pension, hopefully for a while. Nobody knows the answer to that. And so this program, I believe, is one that perhaps can give some hope, let's assume, to some, and also a sense of where they are to others.
True.
So I really want to thank you for joining us. And the question that is, do you know where your pension fund is? That's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So, first of all, what are pensions?
Well, I think, I don't know how long ago it was, but some time back, we had done a program on retirement, particularly with respect to business owners. And we looked at plans that could be in play as to how they can address that issue. I think what we need to do today this evening, is to try to have an overview of what pension is all about. So I would like to first of all basically deal with what is a pension. A pension is a fixed sum based on a predetermined legal agreement, or contractual terms. That is the plan. To be paid regularly to a person on retirement from active service. There are many types of pensions, including defined benefit plans, defined contribution plans, social plans, governmental plans, disability, and others.
We're going to look at each of those separately, right?
I certainly will.
Yes, okay.
Pension should not be confused with severance pay. A pension is paid in regular installments, while a severance is paid in one lump sum. I think it's important to understand that the term retirement pension and superannuation, as it is known in some countries like Australia and New Zealand, refers to a pension granted upon retirement to an individual who is a member of a plan. That plan, like I said, could be either of those plans above, except in the case of social plans and basically social plans. Retirement plans are generally established by employers, insurance companies, the government, other institutions such as employer associations or trade unions. Retirement pensions are typically in the form of guaranteed life annuity, thereby ensuring against the risk of longevity. A pension created by an employer for the benefit of an employee is commonly referred to as an occupational or employer pension. As stated before, labor unions, employer associations, government, and other organizations may also fund pensions. Occupational pensions are in the form of deferred compensation, usually advantageous to the employee and the employer for tax reasons. Here is it. Because there is a tax deductibility, that means you reduce your tax liability, both from the employee side as well as the employer side, it is advantageous to establish a pension plan. Occupational pensions in the form like I said, is the form of deferred compensation. Now, many pensions also contain an additional insurance aspect, since they often will pay benefits to survivors or disabled beneficiaries. The next question would be, what are the types of pensions available? I think I alluded to it early on. Let me deal with in order.
Yes.
I would like to say you have employee-based pensions. And it is basically a retirement plan that is an arrangement, a legal document setting out the framework and contractual terms between the parties to the agreement. And what it does, it provides persons with an income during retirement when they're no longer earning steady employment income.
Is that mandatory?
Well, not really, not with an employee. It does not have to. There are some that are mandatory, and I would get to that. For example, in the St. Vincent context, you would have like the NIS.
Right. I'm talking about the employer itself.
The employer, no, not mandatory.
Okay.
Oftentimes, retirement plans require both the employer and the employee to contribute towards the fund during the employee's employment in order to receive a defined benefit upon retirement. It is a tax-deferred saving vehicle that allows for tax-free accumulation of the fund for later use at retirement. And I will deal with that a little later on, but give you an example. Pensions, when you enjoy the benefit of the deduction up front, because pension is paid, because you're going to receive a pension, obviously at that stage you will pay tax. So, but there are also certain exceptions. For example, in St. Vincent, the annual pension income of $20,000 or less is not subject to tax. In other countries, other jurisdictions, say like places like Canada, there's not necessarily a deduction, but there is what they call a tax credit based on a threshold, based on some limitation, as we have in this case. And I guess you would have the same thing like in the UK and also in the United States. Then you have other types of pensions, what I call self-funded pensions. In order to reduce the social services burdens, governments, particularly those in the advanced economies, encourage their citizens to save for their retirement through self-funded retirement plans that are in addition to the employee-based pensions. These contributions, albeit subject to jurisdictional limitation, as I just said, like in the case of Canada, there's a limitation of 18% of your taxable income. While if you did not use it in that particular year, it could be accumulated and you can use it in the future. What it does essentially is to reduce your tax burden. And that tax burden essentially is to fund your future retirement. These contributions, like I said, has some limitation, and they're tax deductible. These plans can be purchased through licensed financial institutions. You just mentioned a while Clico, a license, which normally provides the individual with a variety of investment vehicles and options. In Canada, for example, you have what they call a RRSP, a registered retirement savings plan. They also have what they call a tax savings account. Now, if you were to remove those funds prematurely, you would be taxed on the full amount. In the United States, we have the 401k. Most people know about that. So those are the self-funded pensions. In addition, you have what they call state pensions. These state pensions, some of them are what I call defined benefit plans, and others are defined contribution plans.
Good. Now it's a good time to explain what that means.
Okay. Now, but I would rather deal with the definition later on, but I'm going to show you what it really means.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that government pensions for government employees, members of parliament, as you know, I believe in St. Vincent, if you serve 2 terms in the House of Parliament consecutively, you would be entitled to a pension. Also, you have other officials like the Governor General. They would be entitled to a pension even after they leave office. But those are what we call defined pension plans. You know for sure what the amount will be. That's the difference. Other state-sponsored pension plans, like as in the case of St. Vincent, you have the National Insurance Services. Everybody knows the NIS.
Before you go there,
yeah,
that defined pension was once the reason a lot of people went to work for government. There was a certain sense of
security
in the fact that if you work with government, you were sure at the end of the day that you will receive a defined pension.
And that could be true, but it also has some downside too, and we will deal with that.
No, that
later
was
on.
it used to be.
Yeah. So we can deal with that later on. In the case of St. Vincent, for example, we have the NIS, which I call a defined contribution plan. In Canada, we have what they call the Canada Pension Plan. They are what we call income-based. Is that there is a certain contribution required from the employer and the employee. And essentially what it is, if you understand how a mutual fund works, your account is credited by the contributions made by you as well as your employer. In the United States, most people know it as Social Security. In the United Kingdom, you have again the national insurance. These are what we call defined contribution plans. The difference with these plans is that they do provide, and we'll see the difference between those defined contribution plan in the general sense and these specifically, because in these plans, you would find this defined contribution plan has a defined benefit, as opposed to the other types of defined contribution plans. Then you have social plans, pensions, I should say. These pensions are funded, tax-funded, non-contributory cash transfers to older persons. In some jurisdictions, these pensions are universal, regardless of the person's income and assets. For example, a person who is a billionaire in Canada or the UK, they will receive their old age pension like everybody else. There's a tax consequence of it. Whereas in someone who is not wealthy, you will be able to keep it. In the case of the Canadian tax system, what it does not tax it. It has what they call a clawback. It takes it back from you. But they give you upfront anyway, because of the universality of that plan. Like in St. Vincent, for example, we have the national assistance, sometimes otherwise known as public assistance. In Canada, you have what they call the old age security plan. Those are given, like I said, to everybody. There are other supplementals, for example, if people are not at a lower threshold in terms of income, the government would also give them a supplementary benefit so that they could sustain at least a reasonable lifestyle. So we had social plans. The question we need to address as well is what are the types of pension benefits? Because your pension benefits is inextricably linked to the type of plan that you have. So it is important for people to understand that they should read their plan or they should have some knowledge of their plan. Let me give you, for example, retirement plans are classified as defined benefit plans. Then another one is a defined contribution plan. And we have hybrid plans. And hybrid plans essentially is a combination of the features of a defined benefit plan as well as a defined contribution plan. You know, there's a lot of technical stuff here, but you get to it a little later on. Let's take benefits under a defined benefit plan. It's important to recognize this, the differences. It's based on a formula that considers the person's salary, the number of years in the plan, the age at retirement, and what we call accrual rate multiplying factor. I'll explain that later. It does not take into account investment returns on the plan. What happens with the defined benefit plan is that it is guaranteed. You know upfront how much you're going to have.
Right.
The only difference here is that because of the time value of money, because of the purchasing power, most plans do have provision for what they call for indexing based on the retail price index in order to keep the pensioner at least at the same level of buying power.
I guess we come local with that. Is that necessarily true locally?
Well, I think there may be some indexation at the NIS. How regular that is, I don't know. I have not had an opportunity to look at the financial statements for the NIS, so I won't be able to speak to that specifically.
But government also.
But governments generally, but again, and we will deal with that issue because what happens, your ability to index is in your ability to at least raise the revenues, and this is what I'm going to get at. The other plan that you have, and let me explain the accrual rate multiplier. If you could take into account that you've been making or funds hypothetically has been deposited to your pension plan, and you know that if you had something in 2004, those were higher dollars. If in 2015, those dollars are much weaker. What would happen is that the accrual is to really start adjusting your yearly contribution, and this again is based on an actual analysis. You have actual software, but you would also employ an actuary to do the calculations, which takes into account the very same thing we are talking about. The next one is the defined contribution plan. Benefits under this plan.
Defined contribution again is where you contribute a defined portion, the employer contributes a defined portion.
Correct.
And that's the defined contribution.
Right. But even in a defined benefit plan, sometimes, and that's why I said you have to read the plan document, because it may be a requirement for you to make a contribution as well. So even though it is not called a defined contribution plan, it doesn't mean that you are not required to make a contribution. But in specifically speaking with the defined contribution, it states specifically that there would be a contribution by the employer and the employee. The difference here is that whereas in the defined benefit plan, you would know what your pension would be. In the case of the defined contribution plan, it is unknown until retirement. And such like the benefits, the benefit is dependent on the value of the contributions made and the investment returns in the plan. In this case, the employer and the employee contributions to the plan is credited to the employee's individual account. And this is further increased or reduced by the performance of the investment plan assets.
Let's just take that up because, so when I contribute $50 a month, I'm just going to use a figure here, and the employer contributes another 50, let's keep it simple, to this pension fund.
Yeah.
So we have 100 that goes to my account.
Right.
How do I, the thing is, how do I at the end of the day get more money than that?
You would get more because those funds are supposed to be invested.
Right.
But to the extent that the investment is made, okay, or to the extent that the investment had a good return, you could have an increase. But let us assume that there was a loss on the investment. Your account is affected. Let me give a good example of some explanations. Just recently, I read an article by the British Columbia, that's at the western side of Canada, their teachers' pension fund. They had a wonderful return of in excess of 14% return on investments, while at the same time their target rate was just 7.73%. So you can understand they doubled. And when you look at the 10-year average, they had an 8.1% return, and yet their target rate was still below 8. So they're doing well. That means they could be very much fully funded. I must also say that there are only 2 countries in the world where you have these types of pension funds that are fully funded, Australia and Canada. And the reason for that is that they took, in their investment arm of the pension fund, they were able to look at their risk tolerance and invest not only within Canada, but they invested globally. As a matter of fact, you had the very same fund had great returns from investment in infrastructure in Africa and so forth. So what I'm trying to say to you, one has to understand not only collecting the funds, but understand that the sustainability of the fund is inextricably linked to the returns on those funds.
Whose responsibility is that? It's my responsibility to pay those monies into my pension fund at my pay slip.
Yes.
The employer does the same thing. But what control do I have over how that money is invested?
Well, again, most of those pension funds are in the hands of a trustee, or the pension fund, depending on what it is, would be at least within the pension plan itself, who would have engaged investment people to do those investments. And like I said, another example, the Canada pension plan just about a year ago had a return of over 17%, while their target rate was only 6.9. As a matter of fact, it is said that that pension plan is sustainable for the next 70 years.
So I'm getting it from you that it is not just automatic that your pensions should be lower. There are possibilities and there are examples in the world where they are better than the average.
True. And one of the reasons too, and we look at the, should I say, the OECD context,
right,
vis-a-vis elsewhere. And it's very difficult to really compare apples and oranges, meaning you can't compare first world advanced economies the same way as you look at this location. But the critical part is that with a defined contribution plan, your pension is not known until you're retired. Because by that time, they'll be able to look at your account and know the value of your account, from which they would get you an annuity. And hopefully, it will take...
What is that word?
Well, it's basically, it's really a vehicle whereby you are able to draw installments from your investment.
Right.
And while it's in that vehicle, it also earns generally what I call more gilt-edged type of security investments.
So there's a lump sum that is there for you. They take that money and they...
Well, you have an option. You could take the whole lump sum.
You could take the money, right.
Yeah, but they would, in some countries, they would not allow you to take the full amount, knowing, unless you have the financial experience and understand investments, for fear that you would just
squander the
money.
And then become again a problem.
And come back, become a social problem again. So this is how it works. And then you have now what we call the hybrid, benefits from the hybrid, that are partially known because of what I call the defined benefit component. Remember, we had 2 types. We had the defined benefit, which is guaranteed. defined contribution is not known. And the calculation of your cash balance of your defined contribution component. So in the hybrid, you could already know. The only thing is that whether or not it should be higher by virtue of your defined contribution component, that you don't know until the end.
Exactly. But you have to at least have a sense of an average.
Yes, you would have a sense, but at least you know what your defined portion. And what that plan, that benefits also from that plan is, it generally, they normally plan would consider things like sick benefits, disability benefits, and survivors benefits. Most plans, like I think even in the case of some general defined benefit plans, they would have survivors benefits and so forth. And you would, like if you, as you know, in St. Vincent, if you look, the NIS has death benefit plans and so benefits and so forth. So some plans, this is why I said this is critical that people understand what the plan is saying. Have you read it? Don't get into the plan and say, well, look, I have people who are more smarter than me. I think you're the smartest person to handle your personal affairs, not somebody else.
Let's face it, the majority of people cower at things like that, especially they see it as being either an accounting issue or financial issue, and they feel they don't have the skills. Do we really have people who help us to do that, generally speaking? You know, a company announces that it has a pension plan. Everybody gets excited. There's no question about it. And people simply pitch in because everybody else is pitching in.
I would make a statement to you. We provide a lot of services.
That is DeFreitas and Associates.
And I have some able people. I could mention names this evening. At least I have one of my senior associate in Dira Narayan. I have my Stan Jr. As a matter of fact, he's right now in our Toronto office, and we do a lot of this. He's a member of the International Tax Planning Association. We are a member of the e-filing association. So even though we're in St. Vincent, we handle a lot of tax issues even in those places.
Okay.
So there are people around, and I'm certain my other accountants should be at least able to help them. The problem here in these parts is that we talk about financial literacy, and it stops at going to make a deposit in the bank into a savings account. I'll give you a typical example. You have to ask the average person, you have a credit card, have you read it? Only to find out that credit card, if you carry a balance, would take you around, say, 18-20%. Yet your return on your investment at the bank may be 5%. Now it's, if you have a savings account, 2%.
2 or 3.
So here you are. That is a recipe for poverty. You cannot create wealth when you're spending more than you're earning. So yes, I believe, but people should at least take the opportunity and read these things.
No, but you made a good point that anytime we hear about the question of financial literacy, it's always focused on savings.
Yes.
Every time.
Not investment.
And I always have an issue with that, because that could only carry you to a certain point.
Well, let me put it this way. If you look at even our system, our school system, I would say, I told somebody the other day that I always remember my dad almost every day. Growing up as a little boy, he never gave us pocket monies. He always gave us something that we could turn into money. He taught us the entrepreneurial part of life. Even our school system, and even among people, if you speak about money, it's like a sin.
Yes.
Yet the Bible speaks more about money than speak about anything else. So I think if we are so concerned about our physical health, don't you think our physical is inextricably linked to our financial health? You go to the hospital, if you have money and you don't get the services, you could go to a private hospital. But if you have no money, you have to take what is available. So in that regard, yes, they should do those things. Now,
let's take a little break.
Okay.
Let's take a break first, and then we'll come back. You're listening to this week's edition of Business Advantage. This evening, the question that is being asked, do you know where your pension funds are? And helping us to understand this whole business of pension is Mr. Stanley DeFreitas, and he's senior partner at DeFreitas and Associates. We'll be right back in just a moment.
Joachim and Associates, helping those who do a great job do it better. What problems do we solve? Joachim and Associates use assessment tools to reduce turnover and bad hiring decisions, thereby reducing your cost per hire. Joachim and Associates, we lessen the need to outfires through strategic planning. Joachim and Associates ensure legal compliance through HR audits. Joachim and Associates, helping those who do a great job do it better.
In these hard economic times, the place to get bargain and the best value for money is Munzie's Fresh Look at Richland Park, next to the cemetery and under the blue tent outside the Central Market. Ladies and gents, brand name clothing, shorts, boxers, watches, bags, shoe and dress slippers for all occasions. Adidas, Nike, Luz, Cargo, Old Navy and many more. Ladies, get your weave, wigs, underwear, shorts and fashionable tops in all colors and style. Also available are iPads, cell phones, headsets, earphones, and pocket radios. Prices are unbelievable, and Munzie's also have layaway plans. So make your way to the ladies under the blue tent next to the Central Market and in Richland Park next to the cemetery to Munzie's Fresh Look. Telephone 526-8063, 451-3003, or 451-3004.
DeFreitas and Associates, chartered accountants and management consultants, an independent firm in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, is proud to be associated with the business news. DeFreitas and Associates are full-service professional firms providing assurance, accounting, and taxation services, as well as management, financial, and business advisory services, all geared to meet the needs of today's entrepreneurs. Not-for-profit organizations, governmental agencies, including statutory boards and business enterprises in a changing environment. See the yellow pages for more information, and we encourage you to visit our website at www.defreitas-consulting.com.
Now, back to Business Advantage with Jerry George.
Welcome back to this week's edition of Business Advantage, where we're looking at pensions, and the question that's being asked is, do you know where your pension fund is and what state is it's in? And helping us is the Dean of Business Advantage, Mr. Stanley DeFreitas himself. Yes, so let's go ahead.
Yeah, we were saying another question that is very important to understand. We must understand how pensions are funded.
Mm-hmm.
Critical. Regardless what benefit that you think you're going to have, you must know how the funds will be derived. And retirement plans are either funded or unfunded, except in the case of defined contribution plans. Remember we spoke about that?
Where you know what money you're going to get up front.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying, in funding, the funding to fund these benefits, the plans are funded by the employer. I'm talking about the defined contribution plans, by the employer and the employee. So you know that is funded, plus any gains on the investment of those fund assets. So that is known. There are instances too where there are defined benefit plans whereby the employer and the employer will make a contribution as well. The difference with a defined contribution plan is simply this, that the investment risk and rewards lies with the plan members of a defined contribution plan. In the case of a defined benefit plan, the investment risk, is with the sponsor. The employer.
Employer. Mm-hmm.
So
That's why we see a lot of cases now these days, they're moving it.
Precisely.
Okay.
And that is one of the reasons, because it becomes too expensive. And what also happened is that you mentioned how are these things administered, but we're going to deal with it after. With the defined benefit plan, like I said, any shortfall in the plan, the employer has to make it, make up that difference. Generally, in the private sector, a defined benefit plan, the assets are, that means when they are funded, the assets are taken out and they're placed with a trustee on a licensed financial institution to manage the funds. So it is excluded from the company's financial statement.
From the general run of play.
Right. There are instances, however, particularly when the fund is just starting, you may find that there may be an unfunded portion for the simple reason for past services. The plan may say, for example, that we have X amount owing for past services, and we are proposing to pivot in installments over the years. So you may find a plan that is not fully funded, but yet funded. I'll give you an example. It wasn't too long ago with the economic decline in the United States and the demise of General Motors that their plan was grossly underfunded. Because of the, should I say, revival of the company, and because of certain adjustments and certain concessions, the plan is now, the last report I saw, was 96% funded. So it's basically called it fully funded. But there are many instances where those things are not funded properly. Like I said early on, most government pension plans are not funded. They're unfunded. And they're being paid from current taxes. On several occasions I would have mentioned, and I'm not talking only in the OECS, global. And if you look at the situation in Greece today, you'd understand why those people are really very concerned. We don't have to go too far. It was not too long ago. Detroit defaulted on their creditors, and people who had expected a certain pension, they too, and now had to take a haircut. And so the level of pension that they were expecting is no longer. So their retirement is not so much in the sunshine years, because they're now looking for a part-time job to support their livelihood.
Yeah.
So, but like I said, so you have unfunded pensions. Now, when you have economic contraction affect a lot of people, not only governments, it affects businesses, because if it's contracting, how would companies fund their pension plan, particularly both contributed benefit plans and defined benefit plans? Because they may have cash flow problems and may not be able to meet their obligations.
Let's take this slow. So you're saying the state of the economy has a direct relationship on the pension.
Very true.
Okay.
Very true. And it is what it does. I mentioned a long time ago that if you were to compute the unfunded portion or the obligation of all governments, and you have a correlation with that with the national debt, you'd realize that the national debt is grossly understated because the obligations. If you look, for example, in the OECS, most governments, the government budget and the represent around 50% of the economy. That means they're the largest employer. If you have these pension obligations and they're not quantified to look at the financial position, you may find that in a time of serious contraction, that you may not get the pension that you're expecting, or you may not get it on time.
So you're saying that we should have a system where we know how many people are being paid pensions. We should know what that value is, and equate all of that to the state of the economy.
What I'm saying is that, and I'm going to deal with the private sector on that one as well.
Okay.
Because when you have contraction in the economy, what you have is governments are going to receive less taxes, but the obligation is not reducing.
Right.
Now, if you, and like I said, so when you look in terms, even for credit rating agencies.
Just a second for me. I see we have some callers. Callers, if you just hold a bit, I'll announce when we open the lines, okay? So just bear with us for a bit, please.
What I'm saying to you, so when you have this, when you have a situation like this, governments may not be able to meet it on a timely basis, or if maybe in serious situation, may not be able to meet the commitment. In the private sector, is the same thing. A contracting economy impacts the businesses as well. It creates cash flow challenges. It creates the liquidity issues and so forth. And they too may not be able to make it. They give you a good typical case, and you may know the company. You remember Nortel?
I do.
Nortel, one of the largest in the world, Canadian corporation. You have where they had very hefty pensions, and they were defined benefit plans. But if the assets, rather than taking the assets out and put it in another entity that would manage, meaning it's segregated, it was commingled in their asset base.
So they were using the assets as general part of business.
Basically, what they were doing, they were investing the very pension funds back
Right,
into their business,
into their business.
rather than borrowing. Okay, so it's still an unfunded amount. When they got into difficulty and eventually filed for bankruptcy, I have a client that I represented who was getting $1 million a year in pension. He was a senior man there. You know what he got today? $30,000.
No. You mean he moved from $1 million a year in pension
to $30,000. All because the survival of the company, your benefits is dependent on the survival of the company.
That's right.
Just recently, and I think it may be a precedent, you had a New York court link through the video with Ontario court, whereby they made a decision with respect to the assets of that company as to who pensioners would get in the United States and what would get in Canada, and I think in England as well, because the assets were insufficient to meet the obligation. So even then, so people took a haircut. So what I'm saying, the economic performance of a country is tied to even our pensions. And that is critical to understand. So it's not only in the government side, also in the private sector side. So when you have funds, and you should think of it this way, pension funds, as you would like to call them, institutional funds, are very, very important in terms of stimulating economic activity, because that's where they want to invest. Like I just told you what happened in Africa with infrastructure developments by the BC pension plan. We had the Ontario pension plan who had bought Alibaba and sold it for, I think it's over $600 million in profits when it went just when the IPO. And so, and that obviously helped the value of that fund. What I'm trying to say to you is that, so we cannot discount economic activity. What it also does do is that if you have a pension plan and you have economic activity, what does it do? It means that more people will be at work. More people will be in the plan. They make contributions. So it assists in making that plan fully funded.
Let's take that again slowly. If you have strong economic activity, more people are employed.
Right.
Because more people are employed, it means that more contributions are made to the pension fund.
And
therefore...
And they will be spending, and therefore the very investment, the assets that you invest in, either in the economy, and when I talk about more economic activity, I'm talking not only regionally and localized. I'm talking that when there's general expansion in the economy, there's more investment opportunities. If you look in, like I just give you those instances where you have institutional funds that are going elsewhere, they become one of the largest foreign direct investments throughout the world. They don't invest only in their own locale. We don't have those options. If you look, for example, that the options you have here is either in government paper, or you may have some other financial institutions.
Let me challenge that. In an opening, an expanding global market, finance market, do we have to constrain ourselves to an area where we know the quality of businesses that we're going to invest in are not solid enough to give us the investments we want? Could we go further afield?
Yes. And then you need to have the expertise to know how to analyze these investments.
I'm sure they are there.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And what I'm trying to say to you is not only in terms of, we depend on the level of the cash in your funds, your risk tolerance, understanding your obligations in a short term and medium term and long term, you will be able to make the kind of investments, like I just mentioned to you. That pension fund invested in infrastructure in Africa. What is the infrastructure? It could be a road, it could be developmental bonds, it could be what I call special arrangement, whereby I would have my base return, but any super profits, I would participate in that as well. There are many ways in terms of negotiating the deal.
But that's my problem locally. And I've argued this for years, that we seem to think that we must only invest in this region. And we seem to think that also that if we get a 5%, 6% return, we're doing so well. When in truth and in fact, that really can't help us.
Well, a 5% return would be maybe ideal if your target rate, meaning the rate for sustainable, to sustain the fund, is below 5.
Right.
But when you're above 5, 5 is insufficient, because in the long run, what you would have is an unfunded portion of your obligation.
I go on to say this. When I challenged before, people have said to me, listen, we don't have the skills. And I'm saying that in our diaspora, at least, we have people who have worked, I'm sure, within this, and locally we have people. So why don't we go further than this?
Let me explain something about scales. We tend to look at scales only from an academic perspective.
Right.
I think I told you long before that experience informs knowledge. You may have all this skill until you have the experience. And this is why I think on one of your programs we spoke about coaching and having the right people around. I don't think we're at that level. But the key is here. So you back to what we're talking about. So you could have funding issues here. And then enough examples. And what is happening in Europe today, why we having all this social upheaval, is because people are not getting the kind of benefits that they were told they would have, both from the public sector and the private sector. And all because of economic contraction. And these are the issues that confront pension plans today. And this is why you need to have a serious, and I'm not saying they're not serious, but you need to have a serious business approach, very innovative too, understanding what your commitments are and how best you can attract. Why do you think some of these pension plans, in order for them to survive, based on the present obligation, don't you notice that we're shifting the goalposts? That means we're increasing the retirement age.
Right.
One, because what happened, people living longer. So when you do the actual calculations, you realize that your pension that will not take you any place. So you have two things. You either increase premiums in terms of, for those that what I call contributory pension plans, as well as moving the retirement age. In an area of, for example, in a time when we have a low interest rate environment, while it's good on one hand and hopefully could stimulate the economy, unless and for those funds today who are invested in more gilt-edge type of security, mean more secured securities, they're not going to have the returns. And that is a serious problem. And the fact, like I said, that people are not, you don't have as many people entering the plan.
And contributing.
Then you have also, in the case of a funded plan, and when I say funded plan, I'm talking, before I mentioned that the defined contribution plans are generally funded. I am not saying that because they are funded, they necessarily would meet the benefits expectations.
Right.
Because it is contingent on the ability to have good returns and more plan members, because you have an individual account. Your account is like a mutual fund. You only get the percentage of, let's assume that you had 1% of the plan. Any earnings, you get 1%. Any losses, you would dock with the 1%.
1% too.
So, but in the case of benefit plans, it is normally, again, where the funds are, once they're funded, the assets are removed from the corporation or the employer, and it's in the hand of a trustee. And or if it is, if the plan itself has its own separate entity, whereby it has all the resources to do those things, they would then have an investment arm. But the funds and any shortfall, the employer is duty bound to make it up. And just to repeat, but it doesn't mean, especially in instances where you have past services, especially somebody just initiating a plan, that you may have some underfunded portion. What is important to also understand, that most insurance companies, for example, provide pension plans. I would say, I would even take it, they administer. And what happened, so because the companies, because of our size and so forth, we generally would have an insurance company manage our funds.
Mm-hmm.
The problem, and like I said, I don't have all the facts, but what we need to do, or what we need to know about the insurance companies, number one, and let me just backtrack a little bit. Even the service providers, meaning the people who manage the funds, like insurance companies, they are regulated by, in St. Vincent, say by our FSA, the same like in the UK. And the purpose for that regulation is to make sure that, number one, that the companies are solvent, that they have the governance structure is proper, and because the pension funds are basically fiduciary in nature, in that they hold a fiduciary position to those pension funds. What I would hope is that whenever you have funds that you're managing, it's always best to make sure that they are segregated, so that if, for example, there is any insolvency, that creditors will not put their hands on the very same pension funds.
Let's go with that one slow, because immediately that brings into what happened to CLICO, British American. It kind of makes you have to ask the questions, what happened there? Because those are two insurance companies.
I don't know if British American had the pension plans or just CLICO.
CLICO.
Mm-hmm. British American had investments.
They had investments. Yeah. But I'm sure they had some.
I am not aware, but subject to correction. Mm-hmm. British American had more to do with investment, but the point is, pension funds could have invested in those investments too.
Investments, right?
That's the point.
That's it.
And well, what has been happening here in these parts is that people who would have their interests in these institutions never see fit to look at the financial statements.
But they don't know how.
Well, let me put this: if you don't know, you have to get somebody who knows.
Sometimes not that they don't know, is that they don't know they should.
But that may be the case. But in the case of and I don't have the full story on the CLICO issue, so I don't know what is there. But the point is that if those funds were invested, whoever they are, and it is not segregated, it's a pity. Because they should have. Because you see, if you're managing something.
But start from there. You spoke a while ago about the fact that the FSA has responsibility to check on the solvency. But
that is in recent times.
Yes, in recent times.
Before that, you had the supervisor of insurance and so forth.
Right.
And those are the issues.
Those are the places where we drop the ball.
Well, maybe, and give them, if even they are culpable, the others would be culpable. Mm-hmm. And then I'm speaking as a professional too. As an auditor, you're supposed to know. So if you see those financial statements, how current were those audited statements? Were the audit statements, were they qualified statements? That would set an alarm as the things are not up and up. But while the regulator obviously has to be responsible. For example, in some jurisdictions, except for non-church private pension plans. But where you have private sector pension plans, there is a governmental agency, as we have in the FSA, that monitors. But what they also do, there's also an insurance premium. So you pay in a premium in the event of a default, because what happened in that case, the very governments will take over the pension plan and make sure that there's no uninterrupted pension payments.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because one of the battles going on right now between the shareholders of Clico and Trinidad and Tobago is the short-term investment people. There's enough money in the statutory fund to pay them. The government is kind of holding back, and there's a bit of bassa. The point I'm making is that in Trinidad, the statutory fund was funded.
Well, if it is funded, what is the problem in making the payments?
Well, it's all political.
But you know why? You know why they would not want to pay that? Because if they were to take the statutory fund and pay out, what would happen? The company would collapse. Because by
well, no, but remember in Trinidad, the government has put back in money in there.
No, but what I'm saying, the government may have put back money to capitalize it, to make sure that the capital deficiency has been corrected.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean, if you look at the Insurance Act in Trinidad, it mandates that you're supposed to have a certain level of statutory deposit or equivalent. So if you were to take that to liquidate
short term,
that means government would have to supplement that in order to make that payment. So that could very well be the reason. But I am just saying.
No, I hear you, and it seems political at the moment, but I believe the delays are exactly for the reason that you are giving. But the point I really want to make out of it is that they at least have funds in their statutory account. In these parts, not just in Vincent, but these islands, that is one of the major flaws of the whole Clico investment situation, that those areas were not taken care of.
Well, one of the problems that I have had generally with most of the statutory funds is that the prescribed assets that are being used, or that is being given that you could invest in, is almost exclusively government paper.
Okay.
So it would mean to redeem, it would mean the government would then have to pay up, because it would have to redeem those very same paper. So that could be also problematic. And so it may be bigger than what you're hearing until you see all the facts.
Until somebody tell us. Yeah. Let's take a break. And when we come back from this break, we'll open the telephone lines. The numbers are 456-5967. On the Magic Jack is 718-734-5615. We're expecting your calls, so stay with us, and we'll be right back with you in just a moment.
Joachim and Associates, helping those who do a great job do it better. What problems do we solve? Joachim and Associates use assessment tools to reduce turnover and bad hiring decisions, thereby reducing your cost per hire. Joachim and Associates, we lessen the need to outfires through strategic planning. Joachim and Associates ensure legal compliance through HR audits. Joachim and Associates, helping those who do a great job do it better.
In these hard economic times, the place to get bargain and the best value for money is Munzie's Fresh Look at Richland Park, next to the cemetery and under the blue tent outside the Central Market. Ladies and gents, brand name clothing, shorts, boxers, watches, bags, shoe and dress slippers for all occasions. Adidas, Nike, Luz, Cargo, Old Navy and many more. Ladies, get your weave, wigs, underwear, shorts and fashionable tops in all colors and style. Also available are iPads, cell phones, headsets, earphones, and pocket radios. Prices are unbelievable, and Munzie's also have layaway plans. So make your way to the ladies under the blue tent next to the Central Market, and in Richland Park next to the cemetery, to Munzie's Fresh Look. Telephone 526-8063, 451-3003, or 451-3004.
Business Advantage for news, views, and commentary from the Caribbean's best economists and analysts. Now, back to Business Advantage with Jerry George.
Welcome back to this edition of Business Advantage. And this evening we are asking the question, do you know where your pension fund is? Very important question. And tonight helping us to at least unravel what we should know and what it all means is Mr. Stanley DeFreitas. We're taking your calls, as I said earlier. 4565967 is the number. 718-734-5615 is the other number. While we wait the calls, the question of funding, all right, and who should fund and where the funds are. In countries like in some of the more advanced countries, persons are given this information, I don't know, maybe at the end of the year at some point, or they can demand some of this information. But is that true about our situation, generally speaking, in the Caribbean?
No, not generally speaking. Not necessarily.
Okay, we have a caller. Let's go back to the phone lines. Good evening, and thanks for calling.
Yeah, good night, Jerry. Good night, Mr. DeFreitas.
Good night.
Okay, I have a little question here I want to ask. Okay, it's a twofold thing anyway. I was working with a government institution, and CLICO I was in a contribution pension plan, and CLICO was the custodian. And then you know what happened with CLICO. They called a general meeting, the company, and said that the money is safe. But up to the time I was sent home, a couple of years after, right now I don't know who is the custodian. And the question I want to ask, those monies that are being pooled between the employer and the employee, are they supposed to be invested? And if they're invested, does the employer have to get a cut out of that? That's my question. I'll listen up off here.
Thank you very much. Good question.
No, that's the last part. The employer has no share in any profits or returns on the investment because the funds are essentially the plan members' funds. In terms of where the funds are, I couldn't tell you, but like I said early on, if the funds were segregated, then the funds would have been still operating. There would not be a question whether or not they were safe. I am not privy to the financial information of CLICO, but I would suspect that if you look at the financial statement, you would be in a position to see whether or not those funds were commingled, so to speak.
Commingled mean that it will mix up as part of their general operation.
Yes. Even only separated by accounting presentations. But the actual funds are all in one. Normally, if you have segregated funds, it means that it will be separate and apart and not in the general. So, but like I said, but the employer has nothing to do. Like I said early on, the investment risk and the rewards are for the plan members and not for the employer. They may sponsor
that is in the
defined contribution plan.
Yes.
But if you notice in recent times, there's been a move away from defined benefit plans. And even the defined benefit plans, what they have done to is that most employers, particularly private sector, are encouraging people to retire early, even though they would pay them a supplementary benefits between the actual retirement age and the time they would take early retirement. And the reason that it is cheaper to bring in younger, low-cost workers. And what it does, if you ever look at how it's calculated, the benefit is more like a J diagram, in that your benefits grow slowly at the early part of your career, and it really mushroom by middle to the end of the year.
Of the career.
Of your career. So what happened, it becomes more expensive, an employee.
The longer you stick around.
The longer you stick around. And this is why they would encourage them. And today, if you notice, there's more contract workers and so forth.
It's just
so
about to ask
so the
that.
landscape is changing again because of economic concerns. In order to survive, people are making or businesses, and even to some extent governments, even in the advanced economies, it's contract workers because they don't want to take the burden of these heavy pensions. Like I said, if you were to do evaluation of the obligations out there, it may be astounding. And you're paying that in the future. So unless you have expansion, unless you have a real revival, so to speak, in the economy, it could be serious problems going forward.
Yeah, you said that tonight, and it really struck me because I keep hearing Dr. Peter Blair Henry saying that a 3% growth in an economy is just about middling the economy. He says to really have some sense of growth in an economy, especially he's talking about these particular economies in Caribbean, at least you need 5% and up. Okay?
I would ask the question, first of all, what is the true calculation of our inflation rate?
Well, there you go.
Unless you know that, you can't tell me what growth rate. Because if your growth is less than inflation, then you're not been growing.
And that's the point he was making.
Yeah.
That's the point he was making. Because what he was saying then is that once you have growth rates of say 1%, what we call negative growth, which is a term I don't like, then what it is saying is that more and more people are being pushed into poverty.
Well, naturally.
And you're making it in terms of economic statement.
I alluded to that's why in most defined pension plans, particularly governments, but most of them, there's always a provision for indexation. And indexation is because they need to have the same buying power. And it makes sense to. Look at it from an economic standpoint. If you're losing buying power, you would be a drag on the economy as well. So it's not that you're giving them something that special. You're actually trying to maintain their position that would help you maintain your
yourself.
Position. Yes. So, but whether or not like I said, in these parts, whether or not we get the information, and I'm talking throughout the Caribbean, most financial information is not even available. And if they are, they're late. And when you look at it, generally, we are mandated to file certain financial information by a date certain. Corporations and individuals file your tax returns and so forth. And yet we don't get this information from government. It's not available. So
even the opposition,
yeah,
who should have access to that kind of information, doesn't get it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I don't know all those things, but
no, they don't.
I know,
it's a fact.
Yeah. But what I'm saying to you, if the information is, if you go to a bank today with financial statements 2 years old, they ask you to go back, and they're right. And this is what I was saying. Now you mentioned that. Why most plans are valued, they are valued periodically, because when we get an actual report, people think that it is the fact. The actual calculations are really estimates based on demographic and economic and financial assumptions. And those assumptions basically are the valuations done at a date certain. It doesn't mean that is what it would be going forward. So you may have changes since that one valuation report that may not be considered at that time, and you may be working on a target rate that is quite different. So it is a serious situation out there with pensions.
Let's go back over this, because you kind of slid past some of them. So, for example, public assistant use as a pension.
Yes.
Where should that be paid from, basically?
Well, what government has certain responsibilities. That's why you and I pay taxes.
Right.
Okay? And the population. For those who are in need, as I say, we have a social conscience. So we do provide that. And it's not only here, it is provided elsewhere in the world. Okay? So that's why it is non-contributory, because the person never paid it, can't pay, or may have paid, basically, in their working life, whether that they bought goods, so they would have paid indirect duties, they would have paid VAT, and so forth. So they have made a contribution, but even not a direct one, not something that you and I can see.
Right.
And because government has a responsibility towards the poor, that is important. That too requires indexation too, because of buying power. So that's what I'm saying.
I'm sure I'm going to lead you to something, because NIS is a pension.
Correct.
Some people don't know what value of that pension they're going to get down the road. But hold. But government has taken money out of it to pay public assistance programs.
Do you know that for a fact?
Yeah, yes, that's happened for a fact.
Okay.
That's a fact.
Okay, let me deal with this issue.
When I say not necessarily strictly as public assistance, but they have taken monies out for people who have not even paid a pension.
And this is why I'm saying to you, if you look at the legislation that formed the NIS, it would be, they have a framework, they have the terms and conditions. The owner of the NIS, technically, even though government is the sponsor, the owner of the NIS are the employees who make contributions. Here it is. Just recently, the NIS, they were sending out statements to people to want to verify that they live at a certain place, and these are the amounts that were supposed to be contributed. And that's proper. That is what most pension plans would do. Every time somebody pays, whenever contributions are made to the NIS, it is not made by the employer. It is, made for the employee. It is made on behalf of an employee. An employee has an account. It's the same way as a mutual fund. Overall, your benefits is determined by the amount of what the level of your contribution plus a portion of the investments. So if the investments are not made wisely, and let us assume you have a target rate of, I don't know what it is, if it's 6%, and your investment returns are less than 6%, you have serious problems. You could only remedy that by two things. Number one, you would have to increase contribution rates, and two, move the goalposts, get people retirement at a later date. Later date. And that's the only way you can do it. Because if you continue not to attract below your target rates, where's, like you mentioned, why can't they go out? Realistically speaking, maybe in these parts the funds look pretty big.
Look, eh?
Yeah.
Look.
But it may not be that, or maybe true. I don't know. Like I said, if what I find difficult with the average Joe public, then the financial statement is not available to them. So if even they couldn't read it, they can't take it to somebody. If even they had a copy, they could ask somebody to explain what this means.
Should we allow this to continue? Because if we have a situation now where, and we've seen it happen elsewhere, where this whole business of pension has become quite a hot potato, and people are feeling the effects of the CLICO situation, shouldn't there be more transparency for people who have pensions?
Well, let me put it this way. Just recently, even the FSA came out with a new code of governance that speaks about that. So what I'm saying is not only the FSA here, it's all over the world. The point is, once you're handling what I call public interest entities, why do we have such tight regulations on insurance companies and banks? Because a significant portion of their funding comes from the public. If you look at the financial statements of most of these institutions, they may own maybe between, say, 15 to 20% of the assets that they have in their financial statements. So that means that 80%
is out there,
is actually funded by somebody else. So we have rules. If you look at, like I said, any pension fund, whether it's NIS, private or otherwise, it is important that the plan members have copies of the plan and also have regular reports on their financial statements. It's their plan. It's for them to know. Even in a defined pension plan, The difficulty with it, and particularly, and I'm not talking about locally only, I'm talking most of governments. The only thing in the more advanced economies, what you do find is that you have the information could be made available if once a request is made. But even in private corporations under defined pension plans, they make changes without the plan members knowing. Because what it is, essentially, especially when it's a non-contributory pension plan, it is essentially a deferred compensation.
But I in a sense could see that. If I have to take the responsibility in a defined pension plan as the employer, then it might be, if I want the plan to survive, I might have to make some adjustments.
True.
You understand? Because it might just be prudent to do that.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's my input into this plan that is going to make it survive or not survive.
That's correct. But what I'm saying to you, but it doesn't mean that since I am part of the plan, I should know it.
I agree.
If you ask the average person, they have a pension plan, have they ever seen a copy of the plan? All they know is that they know they are in a pension because the deductions are made, or if deduction not made, by virtue of the employment. Another thing too with pension plans, and I forgot to mention this, is that there's a period when the funds become vested.
What does that mean?
What it means, for example, in most plans, it takes around 10 years before you become vested, meaning when you are locked in. Prior to 10 years, if you were to leave that employment, you would have a refund of your contribution plus a nominal interest factor. But you don't get back the full what they would have earned on it, because then a pension, even when you have a pension plan, it has who is involved in it. You have trustees, you have a custodian, a gentleman just mentioned a while ago, you have administrator, you have legal counsel, you have auditors, you have all those things, all that form part of the administration cost. And it is no different. What is critical, like I said, is that it is the investments, while prudent, has to be at least at a level that would sustain the fund.
And I think that is why the question of the program: do you know where your fund is? Who has it? What's the state of it? And the more you think about it, is the more that people should know. Towards the end, I want to talk about what people could do in terms of, okay, we might be talking about people who have a pension now. What about people who, somebody online is saying to me, listen, Jerry, my husband has worked for 30 years with a particular company, right? All his money was in CLICO. He's retiring in 5 years. He's not sure what is going to happen. How do we help people who have found themselves in that kind of predicament?
That's a tight spot.
And I have another one who says they have an institution of $100,000 and they want to know where to invest it. That's another of the questions coming in tonight.
Well, I can't help them online.
Not online, right? I'll tell them to come and see.
Yeah. No, but seriously, that is a difficult situation. But this is precisely what we were saying. It is very difficult when you get so close to the goal line that you didn't even know what you had in terms of information. Because the gentleman said he has this pension and is it a defined contribution plan?
No, it wasn't defined. It was contributory.
A contributory. Well, the point is, did he ever get a statement as to the level of his account?
And that is one of the things I want to us to come out here, because in many instances we've been living in the dark and assuming that somebody else, we shouldn't have that information. That's the general feeling that I have.
Let me put it simply. If you invest in an organized company, they would issue financial statements regularly. If you buy
okay, we have a caller. Let's go to the phone. It looks there's a long distance one. Good evening and thanks for calling.
Yes, good evening to you guys.
Speak up a little bit from me, please, if you don't mind.
Yeah, one question, please.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if NIS is owned by the employees I mean, how do they give the government the permission to just go in and take out money?
They give permission? Do they give permission?
Well, if you know what I'm trying to say. I mean, if the government didn't get permission, well, then it's tough.
That's kind of big a leap. But the government are the sponsors and they are the administrators.
Technically, yes.
Yeah.
And what happened? You have board of directors who are supposed to be there to make prudent decisions in the best interest of the fund. That's why you elect directors. I don't. Go ahead.
Just a quick question before I go. So the nothing to do with the employees can override the government going in and take out?
No, it is not. It is a sponsored. It's a government sponsored plan. Okay. What the government, I think generally speaking, you have somebody who elected from labor, you have one from business, or how many from business, you have government by virtue of oversight, they'll have their directors there, and as a group, as a board, they make decisions from time to time in terms of investment. Let me just put it this way to you.
Okay, I will let know.
Okay, sure, no problem. He's calling long distance, so appreciate the fact that he did call, yeah.
There is nothing wrong about NIS loaning funds to governments. There's nothing wrong about that. I think the same prudential guidelines you would use in any type of investment, you should use as well. For example, if somebody goes to a bank with a plan, they would have to show that at least the investment is going to be revenue generating in order to service
the loan.
The loan. Simple. So, and if you take the point of view that if it is a good investment, they would have had to borrow the money elsewhere anyhow. And if they would earn at least a reasonable rate of return for those funds, provided again it is a good investment, I don't see a problem with it. Where I have problems is where any type of investment, doesn't mean with the NIS, but any institution making those types of investment decisions without what the kind of risk analysis that you would normally do in terms of why you to make that decision. And I think that's the problem. But as the employers have nothing to do with the NIS.
The employees?
The employer.
Oh, no, I think
the employees.
The employees who is asking about you.
Well, the employee, my only beef with the NIS on this one, and that's not only, I think it's...
Yeah, I think you missed it, it's the employees he was asking about.
I had mentioned years ago that there's never been a general AGM for the actual shareholders or the employees. And I was told then by one of the executives that they will not have a place big enough. So I suggested, why didn't they do it at the Arnoldsville
Sure,
field?
exactly.
The reason for that is that you can then advance people as to who you would you're suggesting.
We have a caller. Let's go to the phone line. Good evening and thanks for calling.
Good evening to you, wonderful gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
for a
thank you.
great program.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to agree with the statement you just made, Dean, that there's no problem for any NS to lend money to a government. And also, the follow-up statement you made about showing that this money would be invested soundly and doing a risk analysis. And linking that with our failure in, well, I have to use this country, right? To have faith in our own productive institutions and organizations and not really investing in them in the proper way. Like you mentioned, doing a proper risk analysis, and I show that if that has been done, it would show that in most cases, monies are there to be made. And I will give you some specific examples just now. And invest in our people. Instead of taking everybody, credit unions, whoever it is, took all their money and put it in this thing that was illusionary in my own view when I saw it, Clico, and the money is gone. And everybody's fighting now to get back at 2 cents or 3 cents. Why? Let me give you some specific examples. We had a banana pension fund here several years ago in the 90s. The farmers most of them were not educated in investing the money. And they had annual general meetings, right? So they could have said in bulk where they wanted the money to be invested. A little thing happened in 1992, 1993, they took out the money. They asked back for the money. They did not, to my knowledge, reinvest it in any way profitable. That gone. The whole industry went to it. We have an annual food import bill of nearly 400 million EC dollars a year. Poultry alone is 30-something of that. Nobody thinking about getting together and organizing and investing in local poultry production, even for 60-70% of that, where the market is a guaranteed market here. We have our fishing industry. We could invest in many ways. We could put some of the money in the NDF. We could put some in other ways. As you said, just do the proper methodology. Risk analysis, blah, blah, all these things. And you invest this money, right? We have the iron industry, a sleeping billion-dollar industry. So why we not invest? You don't have any faith in our people? All we getting in these countries for a long time now is just pure empty politics and nothing else. No development. I can't stay on the phone much to converse because I'm calling from my cell phone. But I want you to address these matters. Why our people, those in the diaspora who lost their retirement money in Clico, why they're not seeing to invest in? You have housing, you have transport. Nobody wants to invest in 2-3.
No, but you have to have.
To go up the island.
No, but you also have to. You have to have somebody who is leading and pulling together that investment. That is where that is required.
What I said early on, I mentioned.
I would listen.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thanks. Yeah.
I mentioned early on of examples where institutional funds were used for infrastructure and so forth. What you're saying here is...
As in Africa.
In Africa. No, but what I'm saying, there could be infrastructure here too. He mentioned housing and so forth. He mentioned about the agriculture and so forth. What I'm trying to say, one of the problems, whenever you need to access funds, we're looking for foreign direct investments as every other country in the world. But many times, if you are not organized, as I say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. What we have here is that we don't have an organized way of putting these projects together.
That's what I meant just now.
And invariably, we're not talking about the beautiful package and the writings, just practical approaches. That too in itself would stimulate the economy. The point is that if you have I think somebody had mentioned, if the funds had stayed in St. Vincent.
Just hold a sec, we have a caller. Good evening and thanks for calling.
Mr. George, good night, and your guest there.
Good night.
Good night.
Yeah. No, I heard something some time ago that happened to one of the OECS countries concerning the NIS, in which government went in to that institution and borrow a whole set of money. And when time to pay back, government was finding it difficult, and government was even trying to get the NIS in that country to write off a debt.
That country is Grenada.
You heard the same thing. You understand? So I don't know if some of these government institutions...
I'll tell you this, though, that the people in Grenada and the trade unions stood up and said no. They were trying to get a haircut of 50%. And I forget how many $1 million it was. And the people stood up and the government had to backtrack.
Yeah, so I'm saying that because most likely others who maybe have gone into the INS of other countries with a deep hand might eventually want to ask for debt cancellation or debt forgiveness. So I'm glad how Grenada stood up and say, no, because you know it only take one to start such thing for the others to follow suit. The other thing I want to just get an understanding. The people who pay life policies in CLICO are in any trouble. Like how these people who have not getting their pension, like some people who have some life policies.
All of Clico's businesses in trouble. All.
I'm a little bit comical right now, and I just really, it would give you a little joke. You mentioned life policies. You won't know if your life policy would be honest until you die.
Exactly. That's the point.
Because, no, you hear that. The reason because it appears that a lot of people don't want to surrender their life policy and see their life policy, seeing that it seems as though there is no stabilization in that institution.
No, but if the institution has hit the rocks, what are you going to surrender to get?
So then, if they still collect the money, it might be a fraudulent thing that they're trying.
I wouldn't say that.
No.
I think they might have been under, remember, if it is under controllership type of arrangement, there would be some oversight.
I think they're putting that money in a different account. In fact, one of the people on here telling me that they're putting the money that they are now collecting in
it's now segregated. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, yeah. And you see, I don't know if when I joined Clico in 1973, there, it was under Trinidad guidance. But then after some years, I was told that Barbados took over. And it seemed as though since Barbados took over, getting problems. And I'm hearing that they are more concerned in settling their people's problems.
Well,
before any other body.
Caller.
Yes, sir.
What you have to understand, this is what I was saying. If you were looking at, since in 1973, if you were getting financial information on Clico, you would have known of any reorganization whereby another company that is owned by the very parent company was established in Barbados. The point is, it would have been the same Clico family, but you have a new legal entity that is separate and apart from Trinidad. But you could only know those things if you had the financial information or if it was readily available. That's my point. Even with pension plans today, most people, I am certain out there, do not have a copy of their pension plan. Or even,
but did anybody offer them it?
But the point, but you're supposed to ask. If you make a deposit to your bank account, won't you want to see a statement?
Agreed, but some people don't feel that they can ask. It's not a question of should. Some people don't believe that they can ask. We have to look at the level of development, the level of communication that takes place on these things. We still live in a country, in a region where it's very hierarchical. And people believe that people at a certain level have rights to certain things. And if they are at another level, they have no right. It's the way things are. And some people like it like that because it just makes life easier for them.
Yeah, because some of these things is really ticklish because there are some people who joined Clico in the 70s. And when they joined, there wasn't certain requirements at that time like what they require now. And they're telling you, no, I mean, if you get a danger or amputation in 1973, it didn't state in the policies that, I mean, if you get amputation to sugar, that there is no benefit for you.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. That's exactly. You remember I mentioned that pension plans
can be changed.
No, not only change. If you have a plan, the plan would set out what are your entitlements and what are your obligations. If you read that plan, you would have known what would you be entitled to in terms of benefits. It's the lack of not knowing, you would be under the false impression that you have a certain entitlement, which in fact isn't there. Take it down to an insurance policy. How many people read an insurance policy and look at the fine prints as to the exclusions?
In fairness, Mr. D, that is not a simple thing.
No, I understand, but what I'm saying...
Yeah, because some of them, you know, some technical area, they hide it in your plan, you know.
Yes.
They have it hide. I have a plan that when you open it like a book form, there's a technical one right in where the clip for the clippings, you know. You have to remove the clippings to see that, you know. That is how clever they are.
Well, you know, as I say, caveat emptor,
Yes.
buyer beware.
Buyer beware. But thanks for your call.
Yes, my brother.
Okay, thanks for your call.
Right.
But is this question now of more information that is one of the things that we somehow have to find a way around? Who gives us that? You say we should ask. There are two things. One, as I said, people feel this lack of power to ask, and secondly, people don't understand this stuff. And oftentimes, the people who sell these things, their one aim is making the sale.
Okay, that's true. But now we have regulators, and maybe this is the time, because, like I said, the FSA, for example, in St. Vincent, regulate pensions. So let's keep it to the pensions.
Right.
And maybe we need an ombudsman.
Right.
Who can then at least be able to explain to people what these things are.
Exactly.
You know?
And you say that simply, but that I believe that we need it, because a lot of the common people who really do not understand these things, they throw their hands in the air. And I'm saying the common people, but some of the people who you think, because one of the things that the clicker situation exposed is that people you thought knew didn't.
Because I think the problem too is because the availability of the information.
Right.
Let's put it this way. Most companies, or all companies, are mandated under the Companies Act to file certain information. I have a problem with private companies divulging certain information.
Agreed.
I spoke on that. You should have what I call the basic information, but not all the detailed information. But in the case of what we call public interest entities, where you have a fiduciary responsibility, if you notice that summarized versions of financial information for the banks are published in the newspapers and in the government gazette, and in those instances, if somebody wants to, say, invest in a bank, they could go and ask, let me look at your financial statements, because I want to make sure that you're solvent, or yet you could meet my obligation if in fact when I want it. What should have been happening? Because I think under the proposed new insurance
Act.
Not the act, it's a bill. There is a big section dealing with customer service and so forth. The problem is that it is nice to have it in there, but the point is, if the regulator has the information, but that information is not exposed to the general public, it's no good either.
Exactly.
So maybe this may be the time for people to start, especially the current situation, whereby they would want to have a little town hall, people who have the ability to explain things to them and so forth. But
no, it's a must, because there are lots of people out there who are really tonight struggling and not sure of exactly where they are. I mean, if you were in Clicker One These Insurance and you already hear 3 businesses have people who were receiving pensions and they're no longer receiving pensions.
That's crazy. No, I understand.
I'm telling you that. I mean, that will cut your stomach out.
Yes.
Let's talk about that, because people in St. Vincent, especially in the government sector, retired fairly early, 50, 55. If things can't... Okay, we have a caller. Hello?
Yeah, gentlemen, I have to call again.
Okay.
Because it's still, this question still troubling me in Clico. The line that you're just going on there. Remember that Clico had a big international firm that was supposed to be doing the auditing?
PwC.
What was that firm name?
PwC. PricewaterhouseCoopers.
No. Not so big. These people were supposed to be doing the auditing and reporting to the financial the company we have here what is happening, right? And they were not given the correct picture.
Well, that's another story now, because
not given the correct picture.
And I'm not hearing that this company name is being called in the whole Bassa Clico, because they've been did to me like the upholder just as bad as it is.
I don't think that the whole Clico situation is completely...
the point I'm making is that our officials in the region, because of the apparent big name of this company, thought that everything was good. Once you see this company is the person who's looking at the books, okay, we don't have to worry about that. So we never really looked in depth as to what they were doing. And they were holding against all of us.
The question is, could this happen again tomorrow?
Well, that's the question I want you to answer.
Caller, let me give you a recent situation in Japan. Toshiba, a well-known company. They are now been there's been a probe. The top officials have overstated their earnings by $1.7 billion.
Whoa.
And as a matter of fact, the regulators got in there and stopped the dividend payout. And all this was done in order to bolster their bonuses and so forth. The point I'm trying to make, and the question is that they said that the auditors weren't able to find that type of misbehavior. I can guarantee you what happened. You have many firms, some got sued at $1.2 billion and all sorts of things like this. So I don't know what is happening in Trinidad. I haven't seen the financial statements. Maybe the firm had given a qualified report. Or maybe,
and nobody revealed that.
Well, it would be revealed if you look at the financial statements, because if it was qualified, it would have been so stated on the audit report.
Right.
And if it is qualified, it would be a signal in that they did not give them a clean bill of health. So those are some of the things to look at. And I think that if there was any, should I say, malpractice in that area, you could rest assured that there will be lawsuits.
That's what I'm saying. It's not over. There will be lawsuits, I'm sure, on that whole thing. In the moment, the people whose lives have been torn apart need something. So let's talk about them. How does a person approach picking up the pieces?
As bad as this may sound, if you become insolvent, your creditors are not so concerned about your insolvency. They want whatever they can get.
That's my point.
Yeah. These people made an investment. This is the funny thing about investment, and this is why you have to know. I talk about prudential investment risk analysis. If what was happening in the Clico situation, from my limited information and looking at the available financial information, it happened more so with, not so much Clico, but with British American. We had a client who had significant funds and wanted to invest. That client came and he actually asked the Trinidad head office to speak to us, and they obviously wanted to make the deal. I asked them for financial statements. They sent me some financial statements consolidated. I said, no, I want the consolidated, and they separate me in the different companies, the different entities. And in any event, I wanted more current information rather than the stale ones, because it had no value to me. After doing the analysis, I indicated to the client that on paper, at least it's doing well, but if you look at the rate of growth, the reason why they were paying higher interest rates than the market is because they need cash flow easily and fast
to get it,
to do the expansion. But more importantly, if they had to go to the market to prepare to borrow money from financial institutions and so forth, the cost in terms of legal and registration would have been very high. But in the case of selling an investment certificate, it was just a promissory note. And a promissory note that is not collateralized. And that's exactly what they got. But people did not look at the financials. Anyhow, we told the client it is his call, but unless commodity prices continue to grow, and unless they are able to have the type of earnings that at least they're reporting, but if there is a downturn, it will collapse. I was in Toronto when he had called. I said, if I heard and I didn't know about it. And then he said, so I said, did you do that thing? And he said, no. I put a little piece, but I kept my money. We ended up helping that client with a peer-to-peer transaction.
Mm-hmm. So in other words,
that is working today.
Right. In other words, if people had spent the time to
look at it, and get most of them, you have accountants around who are able to analyze these things. But our problem in St. Vincent, though, is that we don't want to pay. You know, we would, if you go, unless it's absolutely necessary, nobody wants to pay.
Agreed.
They don't, unless it's tangible. They don't see the value.
Yeah.
I hear you are somebody who could help you, to save you from making mistakes, but you don't value that service.
Because, as you say, it's not
tangible.
It's not a gold watch you could carry home.
Let me give you a typical example. One gentleman said to me that he would not trust this particular employee to go to the bank to make a deposit. So I said, okay. But yet, at the same time, he was giving the same employee a vehicle of $150,000 to make a delivery. I said, so the person could steal goods, he could wreck the vehicle, and the deposit was much less than the truck. The point I'm trying to make, how do you make that
value,
that analysis? And this is where we are today. We have sufficient people around who can assist, but we also have to be able. We must be able. We must have the mindset that these things, there's no free ride. And this is where we are today.
And I'm 100% with you on that. And it's not just there. It's in so many areas in our country where people, the soft services, people will pay anything for a piece of junk.
Yeah.
They'll pay anything for it. But if you offer them a service, as far as they're concerned, no, I didn't get anything. Let's take this call. Good evening and thanks for calling.
Hello, good night.
Hello?
Hello, good night.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm listening to you all discussion. Let somebody don't see nothing about it.
Listen, keep your mouth close to the phone because it's lucky you're going in and out.
Okay, I am saying that it seems like somebody don't care nothing about the interest of the people in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Because these are things that government's supposed to look into. And I want to know what is really going on.
But it's not government only. What we are also saying is that the people who are actually putting their money into these things should look out for their own interests.
Yes, but come on. Now, any time any business person come into your country to do business, and the people money involved in the government should have an oversight of the whole thing. That makes sure you don't rob the people. You can't go into America and do these things. We're talking about NIS and all like that. And people who doing, you can't touch NIS money in America, you get jail. And you know, these are the things that I mean, come on, man. Somebody not some of the thing right. Something is not right some way.
Okay, let's put that straight. In the case of I suspect you're talking about the Clico situation. Yes, there were some errors there in terms of the regulation. Some faults were made. There's no question about it. The ball was dropped. Things that should have been demanded were not demanded, and you're right. And you're right in that regard.
Nobody in the second Vincent and then the first time it's happening. So something is not right some way.
No, but also I agree with you now. But I'm also saying is that the people whose monies are involved need to take responsibility to. They should find out, are these things so?
You are correct. But what I'm saying, if they fail, the government should step in and do something. But nobody doing nothing. So some kind of slack and loose and they come about the some way.
Do you have monies involved in any of this stuff, sir?
If we need that money, can't buy me that money involved in it. All right, man.
All right, okay. I had to ask that question because he's the kind of fellow who he had money in there, but we had a different story. but yes, this question of needed openness. Go to the Banking Act, right? The banks are now demanding more in terms of how the depositors and everybody operate. But it always seems that the people who are on the other side just take what is given to them. And again, it's this sense that we feel we don't have the power to.
Well, and that is true, but I think it also the discussion or the discourse every day has nothing to do with
The real things.
The real things.
And that's
that
the
affect
problem.
us.
That's the problem I have with
Stop to think of it. If something is happening in Kingstown, a nice time, and nothing wrong about that.
Everything has its place.
But if you would invite people to listen to a conversation of the very same thing that would affect them, not today, but for a long time, nobody has no interest.
Let's take this caller. Good evening and thanks for calling.
Good evening, Jerry. Good evening to your guest.
Again, speak up again for me, please. I don't know if it's something with our phone lines, but if you just put him up.
Something the local phones now working too good.
Okay.
And the magic flats now working too good.
Okay.
Now I have a question. I didn't hear you from the beginning. I was busy. But with all the problems they're having, someone like me who is on pension have to pay someone to help me out, home help. Why should I be paying to NIS when there is no guarantee they might be getting what I pay in there for them when their time, their time come to retire or whatever?
Who you paying the NIS for?
My helper.
But you're paying the NIS, that's your responsibility as the employer.
Yeah, but then if what happens now, my money goes down the drain.
It's not your money.
It's whose?
It's her money.
Yeah, but well, I paid it up, but she may not be getting it.
But you can't assume, you can't act on that assumption and get the fact. It's not anymore your money. When she works with you, it's a requirement that you have to pay her.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's her money, and one, you can't assume that you want to pull out of it because you don't think it will last on the road.
I'm assuming that. I'm just wondering because I don't feel it's fair that I'm paying for someone because it's required, and then that person doesn't get it.
Well, you can't make that. Notwithstanding all the issues that they may have, and I don't know all of them, but the fact is that any fund, remember I mentioned before that sometimes
I didn't get most of it because I have taken care of my mom.
Generally, some funds, some pension plans may not necessarily be fully funded, okay? But it doesn't necessarily mean that people will not derive their benefits. What is important for the very same plan members, meaning your employee, is for them to understand what the NIS, or they have to get them to read the NIS plan. And then they know what they should be, the kind of questions they should be asking. I think what people want to do with the NIS or any other pension plan is to at least have some say in terms of the selection of directors to the board, that while currently they have, I have no reason to think that the current directorship is not fit and proper, so don't misunderstand me. But I think since you are the owners of the plan, you should be the one who at least have some input
to who managing your money,
as to who would be managing the organization. Mind you, government would always have a significant influence because they're the sponsor and they have to provide oversight. But I think on balance, it's up to people to start demanding it, but nobody has been doing that.
And that's the problem.
And it's not only, I'm saying throughout the area. If there are issues,
I think Dominica has moved in the best direction in that regard.
You see, but I think people generally don't take the. They leave it for somebody else to do it.
Thank you, caller.
I see that. Okay then.
Okay, good, great, thanks. Yes, as I had moved it, into how does a person, what suggestions do you have for people who find themselves now wondering where to go? Is there any hope for those people?
The first question would be, do you have any idea, other than the fact that you were getting a pension check, what was the value of your pension? Like I said, it starts with your pension. Are there any obligations under that pension scheme? The point is it a CLICO who devised the pension plan, or if it's a pension plan where the funds were deposited with them. Okay? You have to remember one thing, and people must get to know this. When you're appointed to a board of directors, it is not just a club, you know. There are some legal responsibilities.
Serious legal responsibilities.
And if you in your deliberations and you in your decision making happen not to be, should I say, proper ones, you could be exposed to civil litigation. And this is what I'm saying. So if the plan, I don't know what this pension plan, but if the plan funds were deposited with CLICO.
So let's single step this way through. In fact, before we do that, let me take this caller. Good evening. Thanks for calling.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
You know, I listened to a little part of your program, but what seems to be coming out here is in difference to situations where the critical elements of a contract are hidden in the fine print. And it seems to me that those folks who have the capacity are not leading the way. Because if that is happening, those who know should point out to those of us who do not know and seek to get the pressure to be borne on, to be made to bear on those people who are supposed to function into correcting it.
Yeah, but there are two things. Mr. D mentioned one earlier. Sometimes the value of this information is not cheap. Because, for example, in the case of a person's pension, you could be talking about hundreds of $1,000s, their lifestyle, their everything. Yeah. And that person simply probably does not want to pay $100 to find out the information. And this is how we need to put value to these things.
Yes.
You understand? Yes. So it isn't that sometimes it is not available. Is that if it's not available for free, people don't bother.
I see what you mean.
You understand? And what we are saying is that perhaps we've come to the point where we need to understand that this stuff is not free and in some instances not cheap.
But let me put it in perspective. If you ask someone they go and buy a car, they're going to buy a car for $150,000.
Right.
They go to the parking lot, they kick the tires, they turn the engine, they look at the color, they look at all those lovely things. And there's nothing wrong about that. That's $150,000. You're going to give somebody advice. They're going to give them more than $150,000, but they don't want to pay.
Exactly.
And yet you're going to buy an item that will depreciate within 5 years.
Within 5 years, drive it off the parking lot and bring it back.
But in terms of usage, what I'm trying to say to you, I think we have to be able to recognize, and this is where to make the distinction in terms of value. If, for example, you're a business person and you have a telephone in your office, that telephone has a value because you conduct business. But if you have a telephone at home, other than for the intrinsic use, it really has no value to you. It's a dead expense. In that you derive no revenue or
it's an expense.
Yes,
full stop.
Yes, real expense. And this is why even in business, what they do, we encourage people to do what I call the value analysis. You go to any professional, if you go to your auto mechanic to fix your car, and if he's going to take 2 weeks to fix it, and in the meantime you have to rent a vehicle, you could understand the cost of it, as opposed to one who will be able to diagnose it, give you at least some direction as to how to have it repaired within a short period of time. When you look at the benefit derived from it, you may be better off going, even though the guy who is going to charge you more is
for his analysis.
Yeah. He may be the better guy to go to.
Yes, because you know instantly what you're up against.
And this is what happens here. We need to have to change our outlook.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying so because of who I am.
Yeah, but I still would return to the point where elements critical to a contract should not be hidden. To the functionality of the contract should not be hidden in fine print. You catch what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear you.
So everybody should be able to comprehend what they are signing to.
Let me put it this way, and most of us do it. You walk into an insurance company, and you have to insure your car. If you don't have that cover, you can't have it licensed. You go there, and within 2 seconds they give you a policy.
Yes.
You didn't tell they told you to read it, but you said, look, I need the cover was more important than the policy.
Yeah.
When you leave, you fail to take into account that there may be deductibles that you can't afford.
Right.
But you signed off. What I'm saying, we do that not only with an insurance policy. We go into a bank and we have a loan. We sign a promissory note.
Yeah, true.
And we don't understand the legal implication of a promissory note. How far wide ranging
commitment.
it could be. And yet we go ahead and we just say, oh, it's just a promissory note. We do these things.
True.
What I'm trying to say to you, and even the most intelligent among us, we do things for expediency. Sometimes, if you have to make critical decisions, like I said, you ask the average person, they spend more time planning a vacation and where they would go and the cost of the trip. And something that is much more important, like their financial health, they spend very little time on it.
True.
And that has been our, let me put it this way, if you look around at certain groups, ethnic groups, and talk about North America, they have an eye for this type of thing. Why? Your environment would impact you.
Yeah.
We live in an environment where any type of discussion, number one, everything is politicized.
Yeah.
If I disagree with you on an issue that is fundamental, that means I dislike you.
Yes, instantly.
And if you perceive another gentleman as being in your mind as being privileged, you don't want to listen to them, even though they have an answer. Likewise, if you perceive somebody as not so smart, they could be the smartest guy on the block and has an idea, but what you do, you discount what he has.
Yeah, true. Right.
And that is our culture.
A long way to go.
Yes, we have a culture of not respecting even those among us, and yet we expect others. Let me finally say this to you. Even with what we're experiencing today, I will leave it this with you. We tell people how to treat us by our action.
Okay.
Because if they could insult you, as you just said, by you walk into places, you just sign off. That's exactly what you told them to do.
What you get.
You told them how to treat you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All the best.
But you mentioned something earlier that we kind of slid past in terms of this whole approach to money, and this sense that we believe that poverty has some specific kind of let me take this call. We come back to that in a minute. Hello, good evening.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes.
Now tell me something. Who is wholly responsible for the NIS money?
Who is?
Who's responsible for the NIS?
Responsible for the NIS money.
The board of directors are elected.
Who is the board of directors?
What do you have people who've been elected the board? Are you?
The government? Is it the government, man?
No. The government is the sponsor of it. They're the
But they're the one who is responsible to make sure that nobody brutalizes the money. Come on, man. I find out. Come on, man. I don't know what is going on. I am saying in America, anyone who messes with the NIS money is really gone.
But you can't say that they mess with the NIS money.
What do you mean, oh Lord? So some people not get the NIS money?
No. That's a different situation. They're talking this evening, I think it is CLICO, not the NIS.
Not the NIS?
Not
the NIS.
No, that's an insurance company.
Oh, okay.
Okay? All right.
Okay.
Now, you were saying...
No, I was speaking to the fact that I wrote an article about it some years ago. You know, the statement, the love of money is the root of all evil, right? And I put in it, the fear of money is the root of all poverty. And I believe that basically is where we are.
Let me tell you this. Poverty is not a crime.
Nope.
But at the same time, it's no great honor.
Exactly.
You know, most of us are not able to distinguish between being broke and being poor. We live in a poor mentality. Just like what happened with all these things here. Broke is temporary. Poverty is permanent. And unless you get out of that environment, you'll be always poor.
But some people think there's a special blessing to be poor.
Well, could I say this to you, Jerry?
Sure you may.
And I'm not a preacher man. You have the Lord who made this entire world, who owns everything, created everything in 6 days, you and I included. I remember one time I had a friend who invited me to church, and I'm not being blasphemous, and I didn't make it. So when that's in Toronto, when I got home, she passed by, she said, I invited you, didn't come. So I said, and I saw her walking up the stairs, I said, "What, how you doing?" And the way she walked, she said, "I'm holding on." I said, "But don't invite me to that kind of God you're going to serve." Because the God I serve, I don't have to hold on. He holds me. And that has been
It sounds like a preacher, right?
No, but seriously, that is our environment teaches us that. Like I told you what my dad did as a little boy. I always remember him. He taught me entrepreneurship, and I think he taught my other brothers too. He gave us things to make us, and that we must do something to add value. As a little boy, I had my own little bananas growing. I had my own little savings account. By the time I was 11 years old, I had that account at Co-op Bank. Going to school, selling my bananas and do what I have to do. What I'm trying to say to you, we have this notion, and another thing too, we have no investment plan. We have a consuming plan.
Is it that we have no investment plan because really and truly there are not many investment vehicles? And I think the British American CLICO situation has further exacerbated that situation.
That may be true.
The fear now about investment is like sky high.
Okay, that may be true. Let me give you a good example. There's a lady who works with us, and we encourage this lady to put aside $20 every week. She never had a savings account. So I said, what would happen to you if you need something in an emergency? Suppose I'm not around. What would you do? Started her, teaching her discipline. And every week she would go to my wife and she would make that deposit. You should see what that account is today. The element of compounding interest. She was amazed. The good thing is that my wife would not give her the bank book to do the withdrawal. Okay? But what I'm trying to say to you, we start with a little discipline. We always believe that it is good for Mr. So-and-so. I always said, if it's good for Mr. So-and-so, it's good for you. Always look at what successful people do and emulate them.
But you see, that's the point.
You know?
The thing is that in most people's mind, you just said it, that's for Mr. So-and-so. And so there's some aspects of society where people defend that. This is for Mr. So-and-so. And so to make the transition over there to think that, boy, this is for me, it's not simple sometimes.
You know why I can't accept those of that? We live in an age today where more people more educated than in the days of my parents.
Academically?
Yeah, well, okay. When I look around today and look at even the state of affairs, and I'm talking Caribbean-wide, where you have more graduates. Like I said to you the other day, most of us have our PhD, but we don't have an SVG. You know, you have to understand your environment. If others could come and do well, why can't you? Don't you see something wrong with your mindset? I'm telling you, I look at you look at a place like say Toronto. I don't know if you know Toronto very well. If you go to the
I've been there for a while, but
just west of Toronto, the Kitchener-Waterloo area, that is our tech city. You want to see all those young Indian and Chinese guys setting up a lot of startups out there, technology. What I'm trying to say to you, we don't have to go there.
No.
We have somebody mentioned tonight here about the various potential opportunities in agriculture and food production. We talk about food security. We're talking about the potential, if we could get a part of that type of revenue. It's sustaining. But guess what we do? Unless, so to speak, the job is sexy, nothing is happening. we need to at least do our own analysis of our environment in terms of investment opportunity. And I spoke earlier on about institutional funds. Even that too, even the very same institutions should have some dialogue. Do the same analysis encouraging, because that's how you're going to grow your pension funds. If even you take it up, mind you, it's best to have a mix. You can't have all the eggs in one basket.
Right.
But most investments, if you look at people's portfolio, they have the highs and the lows in terms of the returns. But they have to look at what is my target rate, and my target rate should be always above the inflationary rate. Mind you, in St. Vincent and in the wider Caribbean, it's hard to determine what is the inflation rate.
Because everywhere has the basket of goods.
Are quite different.
Exactly. And in fact, they changed it recently, and you sometimes wonder, but let's go back to the phone lines here. Good evening, and thanks for calling.
Good evening, Mr. Jerry George.
Good evening, sir.
And good evening, Mr.
Good evening.
DeFreitas.
Good evening.
I just want to ask one question. Mr. Jerry George,
Sir?
did the government put any money from the INS into Clico? Pension scheme money into
$69 million.
Where becomes of that money? Anybody who have money, they get any money back out of it?
Well, the people who run that will have to tell us. I don't know that, but I happen to know they put in that amount.
Any intention of getting any out of it?
Well, if the company is not revived and all those kind of things happen, then we might not. I'm not saying we wouldn't.
Well, those people who got their money, you could call that is a waste money gone down the drain there?
I would hate to think so. But unless the situation is resolved at the moment,
the money
like everybody else, not just like the private person.
So everybody who got their money, they spend their money, they all of them in trouble.
For the time being, yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir.
It brings me back to what we were saying. It brings me back to what I was saying about economic expansion. When you have a good economy, or an expanding economy.
Wait, we have a caller. Yeah. We have a caller. Good evening. Thanks for calling.
Hey, Jerry. Stanley.
Yes, sir.
It's kind of difficult for me to call this program tonight. I'll tell you why. Because I really would like to know who is really going to take the responsibility? What the gentleman just asked there about this money is that we invest. Why? And as I say, it's very difficult for me to call, so I'm trying to be very cautious how I deal with this situation. Here you have an entity that is investing huge sums of money, relatively speaking, to our economy. And I'm basing this, Stanley, based on what you said before, on the issue that the state of the economy would affect things like pension and the ability of the pension to be self-sustaining. You have an entity that is investing that levels of money, $69 million. Here is the sponsor of this program called the NAS that has the capacity to investigate, to do the due diligence before it makes a decision that certainly can affect the livelihood of a vast amount of the population of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Yet, they go ahead and they make that investment against the backdrop where people are saying to you, be careful because something is not right. But still go ahead and do it.
There's a lot of noise on your phone line.
Yeah, I don't understand why it's there. But you still go ahead and you do that kind of investment. You speak about indemnity.
Dougie, let's cut to the chase. If the commission on
phones are pretty bad.
Yeah, it's bad.
It's really bad.
Listen to us because it's really bad.
I'm going to change the phone. Just this one.
Mm-hmm.
I turn this down, try and change the phone.
You're listening to this evening's edition of...
you can hear me better?
Yeah,
No, still very
okay,
bad.
All right, okay, I'll call you back.
Yeah, okay. No, I was just going to ask Dougie one thing. All he's presenting sounds fine. If the commission is more important to you as an individual from making that investment, do you really worry?
I just gave you the Toshiba situation.
Hold on.
Okay, is this better?
Yeah, this is 100% better.
Okay, all right, yeah. I don't...
Dougie, I was asking a question.
Yeah.
If the commission is more important to you, then figure out the problems down the road.
You know, it's because what I'm saying, because the government is the sponsor, and the government oversee this because of the nature of the fund, and we make these kinds of investments against the backdrop of what is happening and good common sense and good analysis of why we should make certain investment, as against one caller making a call to invest in the productive sector of the country, whether or not that was a wise investment based on all the risk analysis. But it tells you now somebody has to take the responsibility for the loss of this huge sum of money relative to our economy. And who's going to take that?
I ask you the question again. If the commission was more important than the rest...
Jerry, that's what is very difficult for me to speak.
Have a good evening.
Tonight, Jerry.
Okay, good.
That's what I was saying early on. When you have an expanding economy, at least governments would step in and rescue the plan.
Mm-hmm.
But you, notwithstanding, it's...
Andy, we get in a rush of calls too.
Okay,
at the end, but I give you enough time to wrap it up. Good evening.
Good evening, Jerry.
Yes,
good evening, Dougie. I'm DeFreitas.
Yes, okay, good evening.
Is a question I really want to ask, right?
Feedback. So...
One little second.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A question I really want to ask is that because people are saying the investment that the government invests the NIS money into PICO, right? This amount. When did they make that investment, or did they know that PICO was going to get into trouble before they made the investment?
No, nobody would make an investment if they knew that.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So then you can't blame them too much.
Oh no, that doesn't. It's not.
Because
It's not that simple.
on.
It's not that simple, sir.
But listen to me. I just want to show you one little thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was working with an institution, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was in coming to the end of 2008, and I got some of the information that PICO was getting into trouble. Then I heard when the lady went and drew out $100 million, the Trinidad lady drew out this money. And when I retired, I sent in my resignation at the end of 2008, and I resigned. And because of what I was hearing, when I was supposed to get my money from CLICO, they asked me if I want it in pension or if I want all at return. I can't leave here to go and find these people here, right? So I would prefer to give me all that they have for me. I will satisfy with the NIS pension. I hope the pension with the NIS. And soon after I left, everything went haywire. And up until today, there are people in that institution today resigned after me, and up to now, they complain to me several times. They can't get the money. There's no way to go to get the money. They're pushing them wrong and wrong in a circle, and they can't get the money. So I don't know.
Well, no, you stop there, right? You saying in 2008, right? You as an individual knew something was going wrong.
Yeah, because I was...
So don't you think that the people who are going to invest $69 million should have done their homework?
Okay, good.
Yeah. Good evening, sir.
I tell a lot of it can go international news, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's information.
All right, boss. Thank you. We got a few minutes to wrap up. Maybe if there's a person who has a pressing call, they could make it now, because after now we're gonna shut down the phone lines, because I want to give you some wrap up time. Mm-hmm. So go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this evening, lovely topic, important topic, and if there's anything I want people to take away from it, it's simply this: Kavitemto, buyer beware.
Buyer beware.
Whenever you're making investments, and the investment in your future, which is also a pension plan, that requires the same, even a higher level of due diligence as what it is to even go and buy a car or something of that nature. Most of us fail to read the documents that bind us, and then we expect others, or we cast blame. Admittedly, not everybody would have the skill set to go to these things, but I think sometimes it's wise to ask questions. And if you can't, why don't your group of you at least find some professional who could at least assist you? Even as a group, it reduces the cost.
Exactly.
And I think, but
you hit another nail on the head, and it is this question of the ultra secrecy that we have. I'll tell you how this really hit me. St. Vincent and the Grenadines was the first country that became aware of this whole thing through me. I'm not even boasting about that. I'm just saying it for what it is. Okay?
I remember your interview in Trinidad.
Exactly. The first person that made that. In fact, the morning after that interview aired, I was getting calls from Barbados for people to share the interview in Barbados. The Bajans have gotten together a shareholders group, and I went there one time. It's a fairly big group. It's approaching 100 odd people. But they got together and they share what their experiences and their concerns are. In St. Vincent, people kept asking me, and people still ask me today, what do I do? But nobody wants to come together to deal with the problem, because everybody wants to be secretive about this particular situation. And that, right away, that's where half the problem is.
God rest his soul, but Randolph Russell one day met me and said he was making a plan to have at least make a class action. And he was trying to find people to get involved, and he subsequently told me everybody was
exactly. And that is why
he mentioned that to me.
No, hold on. That is why I'm saying, say what you like. The Barbados Prime Minister.
That's what I'm saying.
Has to answer to the shareholders. Our Prime Minister could say what he wants, but he knows that the shareholders that are there, and there's some very well qualified people who are part of that group, he has to answer to them. We are waiting for somebody else to do it again for us.
Yeah, but we have not done that here. And and I remember when I was invited to give some advice, and I said, look, unless you have a group, you can't do it alone.
Exactly.
And when you look at the institutional funds that were invested, okay, they too should have shown some
more. In fact, they have more of the resources.
But what I'm saying, but because of their own exposure, they too should have seen it fit, at least, even as a group. Because if you look at the aggregate, they would have had an opportunity to present, at least, even from a legal standpoint, how we were going to address this. But again, like I said, we live in a society that even though it is right to do something, we're afraid to offend.
Yes.
And anytime you take action, it is either viewed
personal
and political. And sometimes, so you can't have those kind of discussions. Let me put it this way. Life is like this, and investment is very much like this. When you make investments, there is the potential to have some gains. Likewise, investments, you can have losses.
Exactly.
Know your tolerance. But at the same time, if you stop investing, I think it was Wayne Gretzky, the great hockey player, said, you lose 100 times when you fail to take a shot. Most of us don't want to take the shot because we are so afraid of failing. We have to, there has to be a serious adjustment, mindset adjustment. And so pension this evening will be something else tomorrow. But what I'm saying, your pension is the most important thing you have, especially once you're alive. Everything is because you would have invested, and if you can't, you're at the age where you would never be able to earn the same type of income that you had in the past. And it's not only in terms of this particular pension problem that they're facing, almost every pension. If you work in government institutions, you may feel secure. I'm saying you're only secure to the extent that the economy can carry you. We have had situations now. We're looking at Europe. We are looking at what happened in North America. We're seeing cities defaulting and unable to meet their obligation. So don't feel too secure.
No, but worse than that, Mr. D, is that St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been named one of 22 countries that's in a debt crisis. That alone should tell us something. Let's take our final call. Final caller, good evening.
Final call. Jerry, our people living on what you call a separation diet, a separation menu. For breakfast, we have a meal good with breakfast. For lunch, we can't work with nobody else lunch. And for dinner, we have me not trust nobody dinner. We have been fed that in every aspect of our life. Home, school, and religion. Sure. And it's very unfortunate. It's a big hurdle we have to climb in this country, you know.
Yes.
Look what happened to the tropical last week. You think they do from then to now they do anything to address that thing?
They called in a rush last week, but I was listening to see what has happened. Not another word.
Happen what? Our people swallow this whole divide and rule thing. Can't trust nobody, don't trust nobody, hook, line, and sinker. We're not getting out of this right now. We have to create a new generation of people in this country to think differently. All right,
thank you very much, and thanks for your calls again. Yes, we just have to wrap it. But Mr. D, we as you say, this time it's pensions.
Yeah.
What will be the next?
Well, let me put this. I hope people at least, it was provoking this evening, and at least by tomorrow, at least somebody will start looking for the pension plans to see what it looks like. And
where do they look? Who do they ask?
Well, you must know, for example, if you work in a private company, you belong to a pension plan, they must have a copy of it. You better learn to at least go and read it. If you're working in government agencies, they should have a copy, at least that should be available. Understand what it is. And in addition to that, for those who have more so, even those contributory pension plans, make sure that you keep focus on the financial statements, the periodic financial statements, so that you would see whether or not the investment plans, that they don't have risky investments, or if they do, that is reflected in the financial statements.
Hey, let me break my rule and give this caller the last. Hello?
Yes, I'm really glad for that, because the phone wasn't working too well.
Oh, okay.
Very good program, but frightening. That's the problem.
That's the problem.
The dean pointed out about some frightening points in this whole thing. I mean, how are we going? And it's a serious thing, especially for the poor people and the people who are not involved in this whole thing that the dean's speaking about. Some of them ain't got no money, as the dean say you have to pay money to get it. Some of them ain't got no money, and the poor people see in trouble. They need.
No, but you could come together as a group, because some of those people who are saying that, you know, still buying some of the stuff that you want.
I was in courthouse at some time, long time, good one. And there was a fella, the poor fella, the judge and him, and all the evidence against him. He had a soul to defend him. He had no lawyer, and I see Arthur Williams get up and defend him just like that. And the fella get away. Get off. Innocent fella, but he had problems against him. So sometimes the dean, you got to get up and do that, you know?
But you see what happened? Mr. Williams was, he happened to be there at the time, and maybe...
He was there at the time.
Yeah, but what happened, if you're not in position, as I said, you know, most of us, even most of us, when we're in position, we don't even look across to make sure, and at least to invite.
Well, that is the whole thing. Nobody invited him.
Yeah.
He get up. I see the fella right there. I don't forget certain things, you know. Can't forget them when I see them.
That's commendable.
So you know, so that is what I'm really telling you. Sometimes you got to look across and get up and say, nah, you have to defend that only.
Well, this is what...
That poor fella sometimes doesn't know one lives. He don't know it from B. Look where this thing named the British American and Clico come in. And everybody say, well, my little pension. You take a 2 people little pension, you just get money from government, you take your $30,000 and $10,000 and $20,000 and put it there. Nobody get up and say, the people who is foresight that we have in our country. None of them say, all you better don't company where they say, all you better don't put all the money in that. Oh, they might have put all in coast anyway.
That's true.
Exactly.
You're quite right. You are quite right.
Absolutely
You're
right.
quite right on that one.
But thanks for calling.
Call it
George. With that, we wrap it.
Yes.
Oh, my God. Another caller? Should I? I've been nice tonight. Absolutely. Hello?
Jerry, let me give you Nadine one to go home with a smile on your face. I got an email yesterday. It says, given the situation in Greece, all new euros will be printed on grease-proof paper.
Just go. Have a good night.
They followed one more. It says 5,000 Syrians arrived in Greece seeking a better way of life.
That's a good way to wrap that.
That's good.
Well, let's see what happens out of this. I hope this sparks a conversation, and that, as you quite rightly say, people go in tomorrow and ask, let me have a look at my pen and find somebody. The other important point you made tonight, is people have to find out whether their pension was simply deposited with Clico, or was there another company that was responsible? I think that is a critical question.
Very important. Very important.
Critical question. Thanks again, Mr. D. The Dean is in the house, and we couldn't have had a better faculty than we had this evening.
I was happy to be here.
Absolutely. Folks, thank you very much for once again listening to this edition of Business Advantage. We seek at all times to educate and to give you an opportunity to think through the tough things. In fact, let me say this before I go. This earthquake situation of Barbados is getting a little bit concerning. They've been having earthquakes this evening at that same spot. Have a good night, all. Whatever you do this week, be outstanding.